All right, hello everyone. My name is Ritesh Pandey, and in this video, we'll take up a very significant fact in the world of chemistry, which is the concept of reversibility and chemical equilibrium. Now, we all know all chemical reactions are reversible, but trust me, when it all began, when people realized that reactants could become products in chemistry, initially everybody thought that reactions happen in one direction. Reactants become product because products are more stable, and it certainly took a lot of time for this wisdom to be dawned upon human beings that even products can give back the reactants, and now we know all reactions are reversible. So let's begin with this complete idea of reversibility and chemical equilibrium, and let me narrate you a small little story which is referred at so many places. God knows whether it's a fact or a tale, but it's supposed to happen like this somewhere in Egypt, where naturally calcium chloride and sodium carbonate giving NaCl and calcium carbonate is a very popular reaction. Yet again, calcium chloride, sodium carbonate giving NaCl and calcium carbonate is a very common reaction because this is found in abundance. Sodium chloride is the common salt. It's there in all marine waters. Sodium chloride is the common salt. सारे समंदर में, ओशन में मिलता है. Calcium carbonate in different forms: limestone, chalk, dolomite. You will have hills of calcium carbonate. A very popular ore of calcium. So because NaCl and calcium carbonate is very abundant in nature, it's natural to believe they are very stable, and the products being stable, I'll believe calcium chloride and sodium carbonate will react to give sodium chloride and calcium carbonate. I repeat, God knows whether it's a fact or a tale, but along the marine lakes of Egypt, along the marine lakes or water bodies of Egypt, it's narrated in so many sources, they found huge deposits of sodium carbonate. In Egypt, in the local language, they called it trona. So when huge deposits of sodium carbonate was obtained along the riverside or riverbed of Egypt, marine lakes of water bodies of Egypt, because sodium carbonate is very soluble, people started wondering, where is this heap of sodium carbonate coming from? Now they realize the water is very marine, water contains a lot of NaCl, it's pretty salty, and the river bed, the stones there are made up of calcium carbonate. So again it's narrated that way back in Egypt, for the first time people realized that NaCl could also react with calcium carbonate. Maybe this reaction can also happen in the backward direction, and maybe these two can react back to give sodium carbonate and calcium chloride. Now yet again I repeat, God knows whether it's a fact or a tale, but it's supposed to have triggered in this manner. And much prior to any incidents of this kind, there were some confusions. People, scientists, chemists were also wondering that no chemical reaction was 100% over. No chemical reaction was 100% over. Till there is a sink. Because right away, some of you would question, if I burn a piece of paper, it burns completely. Then there are precipitation reactions, where you find something precipitating completely. The most common question is, when I burn a piece of paper, it burns completely. Calcium carbonate or a carbonate on heating, will completely dissociate, giving calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. What needs to be understood is, this is gaseous form, which is escaping the system. When you burn a piece of paper, carbon dioxide and hydrocarbons would kind of get released. They go in another state of matter. So when there is a phase change, when there is a state of matter changing, solids releasing gaseous carbon dioxide, it's kind of leaving the system. Something going out in the gaseous form, something precipitating, is called the sink. Now what is sink? Sink is something which cannot be brought back. If suppose something precipitates or if something goes out in the gaseous form, it's called a sink because that's kind of leaving the system, that's kind of leaving the phase. We also know that carbon dioxide turns lime water milky. Although we see all of calcium carbonate dissociating, we see the entire piece of paper burning, we also see carbon dioxide turning lime water milky. So when it comes to this reaction, we know it happens in the other way as well. It happens in the reverse direction as well. So a piece of paper burns completely because there is a sink. Carbon dioxide hydrocarbons, they are released in the gaseous form. Now naturally, if there is no sink, no reaction is 100% over. I mean, providing ideal optimum conditions of pressure, temperature, catalyst in the reaction vessel, you always find a mixture of reactants and products. You always find a mixture of reactants and products. You can control the content of reactant and product, but certainly it's not like 100% of the reactant will get over, provided there is no sink. So many reactions, will move both forward and backward. A very popular one being NO2, which is dark brown, reddish brown vapor. In the dimer form, N2O4 is colorless. Now suppose forward it's dimerization of N2O4, backward it's dissociation of N2O4 to NO2, which is dark brown or reddish brown. These are reddish brown compounds. This is a colorless compound. Let's begin with pure NO2 and pure N2O4. Let's begin with pure NO2 and pure N2O4. Allow me to, rub it for a while. You will want to copy it at your convenience. Let's begin with pure NO2, pure N2O4. Let's begin with pure NO2, pure N2O4 and see if we can conclude something remarkable. If you begin with pure NO2, this is pure NO2. Pure NO2 will be dark brown, reddish brown. So this is all colored. Pure NO2 is all colored. And let's begin with pure N2O4, which is almost colorless. This is almost colorless. Maybe a little bit of tinge of color somewhere, otherwise it's colorless. And let's bring both of them. In a common water bath. Well, let's bring both of them in a common water bath. Common water bath means they are both put under similar conditions. Now, when both are put under similar conditions, you see something fascinating. This will gradually lose its color. Pure NO2, which was very dark to begin with, will gradually lose its color. So here the color will become diluted. And this will start gaining color. So this would gain some reddish brown color. And at some point of time, after a while, both of them will have the same color. At some point of time, if both of them have the same color, which is certainly intermittent between very dark brown and colorless, we'll conclude that it has the same composition of NO2 as well as N2O4. This will mean that this has the same composition of, this was pure N2O4 to begin with, pure NO2 to begin with. And at some point of time, if both the flasks have the same color, this means this gradually loses its color, this gradually gains color. This means both of them have the same amount of NO2 and N2O4, the same composition. And this is where the concept of reversibility is absolutely proven. You begin from this side or that side, you start with the reactants or the products. At some point of time, you will see an equilibrium mixture of these two, and now we know all reactions are reversible. Reactants give products, products also give reactants. This is an ideal experiment or ideal equation to study because there is a perfect visual change which you can see right away. But now we know all reactions are reversible. And now when we believe in reversibility, let's go back to the law of mass action, and like we were applying it for the forward reaction, we'll want to apply it for the backward reaction as well. So whatever we learnt about the rate of reactions and the very fundamental law, which is law of mass action governing it, we'll want to apply it in both directions now. Again, I want to remove this clutter. This was a little story which I generally begin with as a piece of history. It's given in most of the sources. And then, if suppose there was a process, A moles of A with B moles of B giving C moles of C and D moles of D, now I know it's happening in both directions. Now I know it's happening in both directions, and now when I know it's happening in both directions, for the forward reaction, I could write RF is equal to KF, A to the power A, B to the power B. This is like applying law of mass action for the forward reaction. And I could write RB is equal to KB, C to the power C, D to the power D. Naturally, when I am talking about the backward reaction, I am talking about the backward reaction. For the backward reaction, C and D are the reactants. For the backward reaction, C and D are the reactants. So, rate depends upon, or it's proportional to the concentration molarity of the reactants. For the forward reaction, the reactants are A and B. For the backward reaction, the reactants are C and D. And every time I write A plus B forming C and D, every time I write A plus B forming C and D, when I write A plus B to the left and C plus D to the right, this means I begin with A and B. This means I begin with A and B. And naturally, when I begin with A and B, their concentration at time t is equal to 0 will be maximum. So initially, because we begin with A and B, their concentrations will be maximum, and naturally RF will be maximum. We called it rate constant forward, I am going to call it rate constant backward. Now, if suppose I plot, it's a very popular graph, between the rate of the reaction with time. In most of the cases, the rate of the reaction decreases with time. In most of the cases, the rate of the reaction decreases with time because the reactant decreases with time. With passage of time, the reactant will decrease and so will the rate of the reaction. So, most of the times the rate of the reaction will decrease with time because A and B decreases with time. This was at time t is equal to 0 when the rate forward was maximum. Now, we also speak about the backward rate. Now, when we speak about the backward rate, at time t is equal to 0, C and D were 0. You started with A and B. So, RB might begin from 0, and definitely as the reaction proceeds, C and D build up, and when C and D build up, RB will also grow, So, with time, rate backward will pick up. So, if this was the graph for RF and if this is the graph of RB, at some point the two will merge, and this is where RF will be equal to RB. When RF is equal to RB, it's happening in both forward and backward direction at the same rate. When RF is equal to RB, it's happening in both forward and backward direction at the same rate, and apparently there will be no net change. This is where we claim the reaction has stopped. But the reaction never stopped. It arrived at equilibrium. Let me name the topic. The topic is called chemical equilibrium. We have just begun with the concept of reversibility and equilibrium, and naturally this is the point of equilibrium. When do we claim the reaction to be over? Naturally, we claim a reaction to be over when there are no changes happening. So, suppose there is no change in color, there is no change in temperature, pressure, there is no sound coming from a flask or a tube. When temperature, pressure, color, all density becomes constant, we believe the reaction is over. Now, in reality, the reaction is not over. It's happening in both directions at the same rate. And because it's happening in both directions at the same rate, there is no net change. So, this is the point of equilibrium. At time t is equal to T equilibrium, I'll claim that equilibrium has arrived. And this is when it's happening in both directions at the same rate. That is why it's very popularly called as the state of dynamic equilibrium. Nothing is static in chemistry. When you believe the reaction is over, there is no change happening. Most of the times it has reached the point of equilibrium where it's happening in both directions at the same rate, so there is no net change, no apparent change. Now if we go about talking more about equilibrium, I want to rub this. It's a very popular plot where Rf is equal to Rb, and when Rf is equal to Rb, when the equilibrium is arrived at, when Rf is equal to Rb, naturally Kf e to the power a b to the power b is equal to Kb c to the power c d to the power d. We can take a ratio of Kf and Kb, and this will naturally look like c to the power c d to the power d, a to the power a b to the power b. Square bracket mean molarity. Kf is a constant, Kb is a constant, this depends on temperature, and the ratio of two constants, rate constants, is another constant which is popularly written as Kc. It's popularly written as Kc and is called the equilibrium constant. I repeat, the ratio of two constants is a constant which is equilibrium constant. The way these two depend on temperature, this depends only on temperature. And now, because these two are constants and the ratio is constant, effectively the concentration of A, B, C, D have become constant with time. Because it's happening forward and backward at the same rate. These are the equilibrium concentrations, and they become constant with time. Naturally, for different reactions, the value of Kc will be different, and a reaction having higher Kc will mean for that reaction the yield of product versus reactant is high. Any day, the moment we learn about Kc, we realize if Kc is more, this means the yield is more. All reactions are reversible. You can't control it. Reactants becoming products becoming reactants is a natural rule. So what you can do at best is, you can learn about the factors controlling the equilibrium or the reversibility, and take optimum conditions for more yield of the product, because most of the times I am going to apply this in the real world. When you produce something in an industry or a factory, you want more products, and a process having higher value of Kc, will have higher yield. So for different reactions, if the values of Kc are given, you would know a reaction having higher value of Kc will mean there is more yield in that reaction. Like these two depended on temperature, Kc also changes with temperature. We'll talk about how Kc depends on temperature in a different video altogether. Naturally, we'll want to take the help of Arrhenius equation again. All the results we derived, log K2 by K1 is equal to E82 minus T1 upon 2.30 Cr T1 T2. We'll want to go back to those results, and then we'll arrive at the absolute role of temperature in reversible equations in a very conceptual manner. But again, before we go there, some trivia. All of this is in molarity. Moles per liter. So what will be the unit of Kc? The unit of Kc will be moles per liter to the power C plus D minus A plus B. It could be also written as moles per liter to the power delta N. Moles per liter to the power delta N, where delta N is the number of moles of products minus reactants. You understand, all of this is in molarity, moles per liter to the power C plus D minus A plus B. Kc ka unit will be moles per liter to the power delta N. Delta N is the number of moles of products minus reactants. I can write somewhere Np minus Nr is what I mean by delta N. Now this is when I'm able to write all in molarity. This is when I'm able to write all in molarity. This is when I'm able to write all in molarity. Or I can write everything in molarity if I have an aqueous solution. What if I have gases? What if the reactants and products are gases? Now when the reactants and products are gases, naturally, instead of molarity, for gases, instead of molarity, the unit of concentration is partial pressure. So when it's gases, I'll want to rub all of it. When it's gases instead of Kc, I'll have another equilibrium constant. When they are gases, naturally I cannot use molarity. When they are gases, naturally I cannot use molarity. We use Kp. Now Kc is where C is for concentration. Kp is when it's for partial pressure. So now I'll write a term Kp, which will be partial pressure of C to the power C, partial pressure of D to the power D, partial pressure of A to the power A, partial pressure of B to the power B. And naturally, because this is also a constant, this is also an equilibrium constant, which will depend on temperature for a given reaction, these will be the equilibrium pressures. For gases, partial pressure is analogous to molarity or concentration. So for gases, instead of Kc, we write Kp, C for concentration, P for pressure. And if this is a constant at equilibrium, these are the equilibrium pressure of the corresponding gases. All in atmosphere, the unit of Kp would be atmosphere to the power C plus D minus A plus B. The unit of Kp will be atmosphere to the power C plus D minus A plus B, which can again be written as atmosphere to the power delta N. So these are the two popular representations of equilibrium constants, which is Kc in terms of molarity, Kp in terms of partial pressure, and then there is a very common relationship between Kc and Kp. Involving PV is equal to nRT. I can write P is equal to N by V RT, and number of moles per liter is concentration. So if I write N by V as concentration, suppose partial pressure of C in the corresponding concentration could be written as concentration of C RT to the power C, concentration of D RT to the power D, partial pressure is CRT, A is concentration of ART to the power A, concentration of BRT to the power B, and all of this could be put together as C to the power C, D to the power D, E to the power A, B to the power B into RT to the power. Maybe I'll want to use another space in the board to explain this. I hope you're comfortable with this. Using PV is equal to nRT, P is equal to N by VRT could be written as number of moles per liter, concentration RT. And then maybe I'll want to use this part of the board, because we recall the name of the topic and the reaction for sure. So I can write this is Kp, this is Kp as partial pressure of C to the power C, D to the power D, A to the power A, B to the power B. And I can write this as C to the power C, D to the power D upon A to the power A, B to the power B. See, I can take RT together. As RT to the power C plus D minus A plus B, C plus D minus A plus B. And naturally this is Kc. So if this is Kp, a very common result is Kp is equal to Kc into RT to the power delta N. This does come in school exams for 2-3 marks. You can derive Kp is equal to Kc RT delta N this way. Kc is everything in terms of molarity, Kp is everything in terms of partial pressure. When delta n is 0, Kp is equal to Kc. So you'll find a lot of very simple questions, even in different entrance exams. Plus, all of this is very much in your school syllabus, the relationship between Kp and Kc. And I guess in this video, I was able to, convey the basics of reversibility and a little bit about these terms, equilibrium constants. We'll want to build upon this. Right away in the next video, we'll see how Kp and Kc will be changing with temperature. This much for the time being. Thank you so much.